The office mug wasn't chipped, but it had a hairline crack running right down the middle. Barely noticeable unless you turned it toward the light. Like most betrayals, I used to think I was invisible. Not in the poetic sense, just the day-to-day way people glance over you in meetings, copy you late on email threads, pass your desk without a second thought. I was fine with it. In fact, I preferred it. No drama, no politics. Just do your job, go home, and keep the peace. That's how I lived for the better part of 6 years at Bristol and Park Consulting. Mid-size firm. Not flashy, but solid. I was on the data strategy team. One of those guys who translates numbers into narratives, quarterly reports, forecasting models, client health dashboards, the sort of work that only matters when something goes wrong. And I did it well. Quietly, consistently. I wasn't the type to chase credit or court management. I showed up, hit deadlines, mentored juniors when asked, and even covered for people when they needed a day. I thought that built loyalty. Turns out, it built a target on my back. It all started the day they hired Bryce Carter. Bryce came in as a senior analyst, which, on paper, was a lateral role to mine. Only difference was, he came from a much shinier company, some fintech darling with slick branding and a LinkedIn page full of jargon. First week, he was already dropping phrases like thought leadership and data storytelling acceleration. The kind of guy who wore a suit to a business casual office and name-dropped TED Talks like scripture. I didn't think much of him at first. Annoying, sure, but harmless. Then came the Q3 initiative presentation. Every quarter, our team prepared a deck for senior leadership. Client insights, risks, wins, recommendations. I'd led it for the past 3 years. Not because I begged for it, but because no one else wanted to handle the stress of defending analytics in front of suits who barely read Excel. This time, I was halfway through building the deck, slide by slide, pulling clean visuals, real metrics, when Bryce got assigned support duties, just an extra pair of eyes, supposedly. That's when things got weird. He started sending me little suggestions late at night. Hey man, I took a stab at reworking slide 4. LMK, what you think? I feel like we could punch up the narrative arc. More executive friendly. Thoughts? Noticed a small inconsistency in the client churn data. Want me to flag it in your version or just clean it? At first, I appreciated the help. I was swamped. But the language kept shifting. Soon it wasn't your deck, it was our narrative. Then my version of the presentation. He even called it my baby in a meeting once, jokingly. People laughed. I didn't. It wasn't until a week before the big meeting that I realized something was off. We were in a planning session with our manager, Tanya, a sharp, no-nonsense leader who didn't have time for fluff. I was walking her through the updated draft when Bryce chimed in, smoothly overriding a section I had spent 2 nights refining. Actually, I think what we're trying to say here is, he said, and launched into some slick phrasing that twisted the data slightly out of context but sounded oh so good. Tanya nodded. That's clearer. Let's keep it. I felt a twitch in my jaw, but I let it go. Later that afternoon, I pulled Bryce aside near the break room. Hey, I noticed you reworded the churn slide, I said, keeping it light. Just want to make sure we're not overselling the uptick. That trend flattens in October. He smiled like I was a freshman trying to correct a professor. Yeah, I saw that. But the board doesn't care about October. They want to win right now. Trust me, this will land better. Something in his tone rubbed me raw, like I was missing the point of my own work. By the time the presentation day rolled around, my name had quietly disappeared from the title slide. Instead, it said, Q3 Strategic Insights, prepared by Bryce Carter. I froze when I saw it. We were in the main conference room, 10 minutes from showtime. Tanya was flipping through handouts. Bryce was smoothing his tie and joking with the VP of operations. I tapped Tanya on the elbow. Hey, quick question. I thought I was leading the deck. She glanced at me like I'd just reminded her about a dentist appointment she didn't care about. Oh, Bryce said you agreed to let him present. Something about streamlining? I didn't know what to say. I hadn't agreed to anything, but the room was filling. I swallowed the heat rising in my throat and sat down at the side of the table. The meeting went well. Too well. Bryce killed it. Slick, confident, polished. He tossed in jokes, referenced client anecdotes, some of which were mine, and fielded questions like a seasoned pro. By the time it ended, the room was buzzing. People were patting him on the back. Tanya was beaming. The VP even asked if he'd consider leading a cross-functional task force. I left early. Said I had a dentist appointment. Sat in my car for 20 minutes with the AC on, staring at my inbox. That night, I did something I rarely do. I logged into our shared cloud folder and looked at the document history. That's when I found the first breadcrumb. A series of comments in a duplicate draft I'd never seen, titled Q3 Alt Pitch Bryce. It was dated 3 weeks back. Comment from Tanya. Like this framing better. More concise than Evan's version. Let's lean into this. Reply from Bryce. Totally agree. Evan's style is a bit too cautious for leadership messaging. I'll own this version moving forward. Another comment. Need to tweak client X's churn number. Evan's math is outdated. It wasn't just the comments. It was the way they talked about me. Like I wasn't in the room. Like I was a hurdle to work around. I clicked through more threads, fingers stiff, face hot. Another doc. Stakeholder MGMT notes Bryce, Tanya. Another line. Evan's decent but lacks presence. Might be worth phasing him out of client-facing deliverables. That one hit like a punch to the chest. I stared at it for so long the screen dimmed. That's when I started downloading. Not to my work laptop, but to a personal USB I kept in my backpack, mainly for side projects. I didn't even know what I planned to do. Part of me just needed proof, evidence that I hadn't imagined it all. The final nail came the next morning. Bryce strolled over to my desk, coffee in hand. Hey man, killer deck yesterday, he said, with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Wouldn't have pulled it off without your groundwork. Groundwork. Like I was the construction crew and he was the architect shaking hands at the ribbon cutting. Thanks, I said. My voice sounded strange in my own ears, hollow. Then he added, Oh, one thing. Tanya wants me to loop you into the ops dashboard next week. Should be straightforward. Just build what I outlined. Cool? Cool? I nodded. Too slowly, maybe. He walked away whistling something tuneless. I stared at my screen. The same spreadsheet I'd been editing for a client who no longer remembered my name, and for the first time in 6 years, I minimized the window and opened a blank Word doc. The title bar blinked. Trust Issues, Notes. Time pin opening mode rotated. It was 8:26 on a Thursday. I remember because the coffee machine was still sputtering behind me when the HR invite hit my inbox. The subject line read, 111 Catch-Up, Tanya plus HR. No explanation, no attachments, just a plain calendar slot at 11:15 marked as private. That's not how things were usually done, at least not in our department. Normally, Tanya would just pop her head over the partition or ping me on Slack. This felt formal, cautious, like someone covering their tracks. I sat back in my chair, the office buzzing around me with idle chatter, muted keyboard clacks, and the distant hum of the AC. My monitor reflected my own stunned expression, brows furrowed, mouth slightly open, half a stale donut in my hand. I didn't eat the donut. Instead, I pulled open the USB drive from my bag, plugged it in, brought up the files I had saved the night before. Copies of emails, drafts of alternate presentations, a folder I had labeled Shadow Decks. I didn't know what I was going to say in that meeting, but I sure as hell wasn't walking in blind. By 10:30, my nerves had taken over. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Bryce had breezed in late, shirt unbuttoned at the top, looking like he'd just come from a jog and not a data team responsible for six-figure contracts. He gave me a little nod across the room. I didn't return it. At 11:14, I stood up and walked the slowest possible pace toward the glass conference room near the back of the floor. Tanya was already inside. So was Amanda, our HR business partner. She had her company-issued iPad open and a neutral look that told me I was either being coached, corrected, or quietly pushed toward the exit. I closed the door behind me. "Evan," Tanya said, folding her hands neatly on the table. "Thanks for joining." I nodded and sat down. Amanda smiled tightly. "This is just a quick sync." Tanya had a few thoughts about team structure, and we wanted to make sure we're aligned. My gut clenched. Tanya took over. "First, I want to say you've been an incredibly reliable part of the team. Your consistency, attention to detail, and historical knowledge of our clients is unmatched. That was always the kiss of death, when they start with compliments. I'd seen it done to others. Hell, I'd even helped onboard some of their replacements." "Thanks," I said carefully. "I try to stay focused." She gave a nod, but her posture remained tight. That said, as we scale into more externally facing roles, we're finding that narrative and leadership presence are becoming increasingly important. It's not just about the numbers anymore. It's how we communicate them. There it was. She paused for effect, like she was building to a moment of great insight. Amanda remained silent, just typing notes or pretending to. "So," Tanya continued, "we're shifting some client-facing deliverables over to Bryce. He'll take the lead on presentations and stakeholder meetings. You'll continue to own the back-end analytics and infrastructure." I blinked. "So I'm being demoted?" She flinched. No, it's not a demotion. It's a strategic alignment of strengths." I leaned forward. "You're telling me that after 3 years of leading the Q presentations, I'm no longer fit to present them, but I'm still fit to do all the data work that props them up?" Tanya exhaled. Amanda glanced at her, as if waiting for a cue. "We're optimizing roles," Tanya said. "It's not personal." I didn't say anything right away. I reached into my laptop bag, pulled out my personal drive, and plugged it into my machine. 2 clicks, and I had a folder open. I turned the screen slightly toward Amanda. I think it became personal when I found internal comments about my outdated math and lack of presence, when alternate versions of my deck were being created behind my back, when my name was removed from the title slide without my consent. Tanya's expression shifted, slightly, but it was there, a tightening at the jaw, a flare in her nostrils. Amanda's eyes narrowed. "Where did you get these?" "They were in the shared drive," I said. "Not hidden, just renamed. If I weren't so invisible around here, maybe someone would have thought to delete them." Amanda looked at Tanya, whose mouth was now slightly parted. "I'm not trying to be difficult," I added, my voice still level. "But let's not pretend this was some innocent restructuring. Bryce ran a full-on takeover with your support, and I have the emails to prove it." There was a long silence. Then Amanda closed her iPad. "We're going to need a moment. Evan, can you step out for a bit?" I stood, heart pounding. My hands shook slightly as I gripped the edge of the table, but I didn't let it show. Not in front of them. I left the room and walked to the break area, grabbed a bottle of water. My mouth was dry as dust. For 15 minutes I paced. Nobody stopped me. Nobody asked why I was pale or why I kept checking my phone like I was waiting for a verdict. Finally, Amanda emerged and waved me over. Back inside, Tanya's tone was cooler, measured. "We understand this was poorly handled," she began. "We're going to revisit the way assignments are distributed. In the meantime, we ask that you refrain from sharing these files externally, as they are proprietary company documents." Translation: "We're scared you'll go nuclear." Amanda added, "We'll also be documenting this as a conflict mediation. You'll both have equal access to HR support moving forward." "Both?" I asked. "So Bryce gets support too?" She nodded. "It's policy." I exhaled slowly. "Fine, but I'm keeping copies." Amanda tensed. "I have to formally advise you." "They're not going anywhere," I cut in, "unless I need them." That was the end of that meeting. But the real war was just starting. The next few days were a masterclass in passive aggression. Bryce stopped sending Slack messages and started looping me into vague emails with no context. "Per our earlier discussion, can you plug in the updated pipeline? Evan, please handle the data prep for my client deck. Let's touch base offline." Worse, Tanya stopped scheduling me into senior meetings. Every calendar invite I had a standing spot in, gone. Just like that. So I decided to stop playing defense. One morning I showed up early. Earlier than Bryce, earlier than Tanya. I went into the shared team folder and renamed every dashboard and file I had built from scratch, adding a tag, EJ built, do not delete. Not to sabotage, just to reclaim authorship. Then I opened a blank Google Doc and wrote a memo. List of client-facing systems built by Evan J. Marks, 2017 to 2024. I documented everything, not just the dashboards, the structure, the naming conventions, the SQL logic. I even linked to backup copies on my encrypted drive. And I shared it, not just with Tanya, but with the director of operations 2 floors up. Politely, professionally, no shade, just the facts. Within 2 hours, I got a reply. "Thanks, Evan. This is helpful. We weren't aware you'd architected so much of the framework. Let's set up a sync to discuss ownership continuity." Ownership continuity. Now they wanted me again. But it wasn't about pride anymore. It was about setting boundaries. I wasn't going to fight Bryce in whispers and back doors. I was going to shine a bright, ugly light on the whole dynamic and let the people with power decide who was building and who was just branding. But that was before the anonymous tip came in. A week later, I received a blind carbon copy from someone using a burner Gmail address. Subject, "Just so you know." Attachment, screenshot 2024-04-13.png. It was a screen grab of a Slack DM between Bryce and someone named Madison. Evan's slow as hell, but he's so scared of confrontation, he won't say anything. Let him build the back end. I'll keep selling the sizzle. Below that, honestly, dude's a perfect fall guy. Tanya's already looking to clear space. My chest turned to stone. I didn't know who Madison was, but I knew what this was. A kill order, and I was the target. The ding of the microwave snapped through the break room like a pin drop in a chapel. I hadn't even realized I was holding my breath until the noise jolted me back into my body. My frozen pasta sat inside, forgotten. I didn't reach for it. Instead, I just stood there, shoulders tight, eyes fixed on the cracked tile near the fridge, thinking about that screenshot again. It wasn't just the arrogance in Bryce's words. It was the ease. Like I was furniture. Like I was a dumb printer that kept jamming, but you couldn't quite replace yet. I didn't know who Madison was, but I had a hunch. There were only 2 Madisons in the company directory. One was in legal, the other in talent acquisition. Neither of them had any reason to talk about me unless Bryce was reaching beyond his lane, which meant one thing. He was already working the exit plan. Not his, mine. That night, I took a long walk. I didn't go straight home. I wandered the streets near the river, letting the cold air gnaw at my fingers. I tried to untangle what part of me wanted revenge and what part just wanted the truth out there. I didn't want to ruin Bryce. I didn't even want his job. I just wanted out of his shadow, out of the quiet exile Tanya had sentenced me to. I wanted my work to mean something again. So I called an old friend, Aaron. We had started together at Bristol and Park, but he'd left after year 2 to build dashboards for a bigger firm. We hadn't talked in months, maybe longer. He picked up on the third ring. "Evan, you okay?" I laughed. "Do I sound not okay? You sound like someone who didn't just call to catch up." I told him everything. The emails, the stealth drafts, the screenshot, the HR tap dance. He didn't interrupt. Just let me vent until I ran dry. Then he said, "I got room on my team. It's remote. Still analytics, but more autonomy. No suits breathing down your neck." I hesitated. "I'm not ready to jump ship yet." "You sure?" he asked. "Sounds like they're throwing you off the stern either way." I sat on a bench, watching the river lap against the rocks. "I need to see this through," I said. "At least until I know I'm not crazy." Aaron was quiet for a beat. "Okay, but if you change your mind, the door's open. And Evan, yeah, you're not crazy. You're just too decent for the wolves you're running with." The next day, I came in early again. Not for work, for insurance. I started pulling a paper trail. Every deliverable I'd created, every Slack thread where I'd provided key insights, every email where I'd been thanked, then slowly removed from future chains. I even printed a few, just in case. One by one, I cataloged them in a private folder on my personal drive, labeled plainly, proof. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I took a half day. When Tanya asked why, I just said I had a family obligation. She didn't press. Instead of going home, I drove straight to the local co-working space, rented a private room, and I began drafting a formal report. Subject: internal misattribution of work and pattern of undermining. It wasn't petty. It wasn't emotional. It was surgical. I listed bullet points, dates, screenshots. I built a timeline from my first Q3 deck draft to the burner email. I didn't accuse. I documented. The final paragraph read, "I have always acted in good faith and contributed to this team's long-term success. I am raising these concerns because I believe there is a pattern of professional misrepresentation that, if left unaddressed, could impact both client trust and internal morale." I signed it, attached the PDFs, BCC'd myself. Then I sent it to Tanya, Amanda, HR, and the director of analytics. After that, I went home, turned off my phone, and watched a documentary on space telescopes, just to remember what it felt like to think big again. The fallout began the next morning. Bryce's desk was empty when I arrived. Not running late empty, just stripped. His framed quote, "Disrupt, deliver, dominate," was gone. So was the tiny bonsai tree he used to brag about keeping alive through sheer willpower. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. At 10:13 a.m., Amanda emailed me. "We've received your report and are reviewing all materials. Please refrain from discussing this matter with other employees until the review is complete." That was fine by me. But at 3:45 p.m., Tanya pinged me on Slack. "Can you swing by my office for 5?" I almost said no, but curiosity got the better of me. She didn't even make me sit. "Bryce has decided to pursue other opportunities," she said plainly, like it was just a calendar update. "Effective immediately." I nodded. "Did he resign?" A pause. "Let's just say it was a mutual decision." I looked her in the eye. "You knew what he was doing, Tanya. You didn't stop it." She sat back. "That's not entirely fair." "Isn't it?" I asked. "You read the comments. You saw the versions. You let my name get scrubbed from my own work." She didn't deny it. "People make mistakes," she said, "but they can also try to fix them." I didn't answer. She shifted in her chair. "I'd like you to consider taking a more visible role again. Leadership's been briefed. They respect your work. We can rebuild this." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. I'll think about it. That night, I logged into my laptop one last time, opened the folder marked Proof, compressed it into a single zip file, stored it on a cloud drive under a password only I knew, not to use, just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. Then I emailed Aaron. Subject: Still got that spot open? Message: Let's talk. Ready to build something real. The chair in Tanya's office was fake leather, but the seat had absorbed enough late afternoon sun to sting the backs of my thighs through my slacks. I stayed seated anyway, calm on the outside, smoldering just beneath. She was offering me a reset. That was the word she used. Let's use this as a reset point, like I was some kind of frozen program that needed a hard reboot. Like all the whispering, the theft, the slow erasure of my name from my own work could be wiped away with a new calendar invite. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Instead, I took the weekend. That Saturday, I stayed off screens. No laptop, no Slack, no checking who was liking what on LinkedIn. I went out early to the flea market, wandered past booths of chipped pottery and secondhand books, and let my mind go quiet for the first time in weeks. I bought a used copy of The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, and I read the whole thing on a park bench. By Sunday night, I had clarity, not just about Bryce or Tanya or the emails, but about me. I wasn't angry anymore, not like before. The bitterness was fading, leaving behind something sharper: intention. I wasn't going to sink into that office chair and pretend nothing had happened. I wasn't going to become the guy who slinks back in after being publicly shafted and quietly reinstated. I was going to speak, not in rage, in record. Monday morning, I sent Tanya an email. Subject: Team Realignment. Tanya, thank you for taking time to speak with me last week. I've taken the weekend to consider your proposal. I'm willing to return to a leadership-facing role, on the condition that the company formally acknowledges my contributions to the Q3 initiative, and that I am given full authorship on all client-facing decks I build. I'd also like to request a clarification of promotion pathways for the data strategy team. I'm not interested in retaliation or gossip. I just want transparency and a path forward. Best, Evan Marks. It was professional, controlled, but unmistakably firm. She replied within the hour. Let's talk at 3 p.m. I appreciate your clarity. The 3 p.m. meeting was different. Tanya had notes, real ones this time, printed out, not the back of envelope type of improvisation I'd seen in the past. We'd like to issue an internal update on team structure, she began. Your name will be reinstated on all materials, retroactively. Leadership is aligned on giving you visibility in client forums. I didn't nod. I waited. She glanced down. We'll also be formalizing promotion bands across data strategy, she said. And yes, your feedback played a role in accelerating that. Amanda from HR was also present. Quiet, but watching, which meant everything Tanya was saying had teeth. I asked one question. Was this your idea or pressure from above? Tanya didn't flinch. A little of both. It was honest. That mattered more than I expected. We ended the meeting with a handshake, but I still didn't unpack my desk. Not yet. That Friday, the company had a town hall. The VP of operations gave a few updates, a couple jokes, some standard fare. Then, mid-meeting, he said, "Before we wrap, I want to highlight a team that's been quietly doing incredible work behind the scenes. Our Q3 performance wouldn't have been what it was without their insights. And today, I want to especially thank Evan Marks for architecting the systems that made that visibility possible." Applause. My camera was off. I didn't unmute, but I sat there, still. A moment later, a Slack message popped up from someone in another department. About damn time. Then another. Heard what happened was Bryce. You handled it like a pro. Respect. Then another. Didn't know you built the entire churn pipeline. That thing saved in a client call last week. I replied to a few, left most unread. My work spoke. That was enough. The next Monday, Aaron texted again. Still open, remote, flexible, growth path. You in? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I called him. Let's say I stay where I am, I began. Say they actually follow through. What's my ceiling? Aaron chuckled. At Bristol? Maybe lead analyst? Another 2 years, if no one steps in your way. And with you? Build your own ladder type of thing. We're not flashy, but we don't throw people under buses either. I smiled. That part's appealing. He paused. You still sound like you want to stay. I'm just not used to walking away on my own terms. You're allowed to, he said. Not every story needs a dramatic ending. Sometimes dignity is the twist. I didn't accept right away. Instead, I took 2 weeks to feel it out. And in that time, something unexpected happened. Tanya invited me to co-lead a client pitch. She deferred to me in the meeting. I ran the numbers. Bryce's ghost didn't hover. And for once, the data got to speak louder than the delivery. No flair, no salesy pivot, just truth, clearly told. The client signed on for another quarter. I got a bonus, a real one. And still, I knew I was leaving. Because here's the thing. You don't rebuild trust in the same room it was broken. You can fix the floorboards, sure, but you'll always hear that creak in the corner. 2 weeks, I said, sliding the envelope across Tanya's desk. No more. I want to leave clean. She looked down at the paper, my formal resignation. There wasn't a flicker of surprise on her face, just a nod, almost respectful. I figured this was coming, she said softly. I gave it a shot, I replied. You did too. I think we both know this still isn't home. She didn't argue. The exit wasn't dramatic. I didn't storm out. There were no HR scuffles or mass reply-alls, just a plain email to my team thanking them for their collaboration and a message to the director of analytics expressing gratitude for the late correction. Some people stopped by my desk. Most didn't. A few of the newer hires looked confused when they saw me packing my things. One of them, Jasmine, walked up with a tight smile. You're leaving? She asked, sounding genuinely bummed. Yeah, I said. Time for something else. She hesitated. Just wanted to say thanks. The notes you left in those sequel scripts, they made my life a lot easier. I smiled, glad someone noticed. As I unplugged my monitor and coiled up the cord, I thought about all the hours I'd spent in that chair, all the lunches eaten too fast, all the meetings where I'd spoken up just once and regretted it for days after, all the work I did that nobody remembered until someone else tried to take credit. But now, I was leaving on my own terms. That mattered. Aaron had already set up a smooth onboarding for me at his firm. Remote first, with a strong emphasis on autonomy. The first Monday I logged in, I was met with a Slack greeting from the CTO. Welcome aboard, Evan. Excited to see what you build. Not where you fit in, not what you can support. What I build. They weren't hiring a cog. They were hiring a builder. The first project they gave me was a ground-up system for client health scoring, similar to what I'd done at Bristol, but with more control, better tools, and none of the politics. By week 2, I'd already been invited to join product roadmap meetings. I hadn't even finished setting up my workspace when Aaron DM'd me. You're already making waves. One of the VPs asked if you were ex-Google. I laughed out loud in my apartment. First real laugh in months. I typed back, nah, just ex-Bristol. Meanwhile, back at Bristol, I started getting emails from old coworkers. Not gossip, just quiet messages. From Jasmine. Hey, just a heads up, they tried to... Assign me your old deck format. It broke immediately. No one knew how to fix it until I found your docs. From Owen and Ops, your dashboard still runs smoother than anything Bryce left behind. Just saying. From Tanya, 2 weeks after my departure. I hope your new role is treating you well. I regret not listening sooner. I didn't reply right away. I let the message sit in my inbox for a few days. When I finally responded, I kept it short. Thanks for the note. I'm doing well. Hope the team is too. She didn't reply. That was fine. Some endings don't need applause. Now, when I look back, I realized the betrayal wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how long I stayed silent, how long I made excuses for being pushed aside, how many times I convinced myself that being the quiet professional meant keeping my head down no matter what. But I know better now. I know what it feels like to take up space, to sign your name on something and not flinch when people read it aloud, to know your voice matters, not because it's loud, but because it's honest. I don't carry anger anymore, but I carry clarity. And that's something nobody can delete from a slide deck. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.